can't believe my machine created all of this.
It's enough to make a grown man cry.
Are those chimpanzees?
Butter.
Look, mosquitoes. Perfect.
Oh, what's that over there?
That's just a tomato.
So I guess I'm a bit late to the party on this one, but I recently had a chance to see Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, and I figured I'd record a short vlog since I got a free minute here. And I didn't really know what to expect with this movie. I never saw the first one. I always thought the idea of turning a short children's picture book into a full-length movie was a bit of a stretch, and taking that and turning it into a sequel was an even bigger stretch. But for what it's worth, I think they pulled it off pretty well. This was actually pretty good. And from what I gather, it picks up right where the first movie leaves off. They were kind enough to include a quick 2-minute recap of the first movie, so people like me could get caught up. And basically, Flint Lockwood's home of Swallow Falls has been completely covered with food thanks to his, what is it called? The Flint Lockwood Diatonic Supermutating Dynamic Food Replicator, or Flitismitifer for short. And the word Flitismitifer is probably pronounced about 15 different ways throughout the course of the film. And so yeah, the island is completely covered with food and in desperate need of a cleanup. Fortunately, Flint's childhood hero, a brilliant scientist named Chester V, and the owner of LiveCorp, has volunteered to bring his company in and clean up the island, and even temporarily relocates everyone and gives Flint a job at LiveCorp, which he is, of course, ecstatic about. But as the cleanup effort goes on, they quickly realize that not all is well in Swallow Falls, as the various food items that litter the island have started to become sentient and are turning into animals. And some of them are learning how to swim, and they're worried they might get off the island. And they figure out that the Flitismitifer must still be active and creating all of these weird food creatures. So Chester gets Flint to go to the island in order to find the Flitismitifer and turn it off. So Flint recruits basically all of his friends from the first movie, and off they go. And of course, it turns out that Chester V just might have an ulterior motive here. He just might possibly, maybe, want to take the Flitismitifer and use it for himself to dominate the world's food supply. In fact, there's a point near the end of the movie where they quite literally spell out that the guy is evil. And in any other movie, that might come across as really stupid. But because of the way the humor works in this movie, it actually kind of fits. But even though I shouldn't have gotten a laugh out of that, I kind of did. It was actually pretty funny. In fact, this whole movie is pretty funny for the most part. It's overloaded with puns, of course. If you've seen the trailer, then you have a pretty good idea what to expect there. Ah, there's a leak in the boat! The camera pans over and there's a leak, L-E-E-K, in the boat. But there's a whole lot of in the movie. And actually, that was one thing I didn't like. They did the leak in the boat joke twice for some reason. I'm not sure why, because the first time it was funny, the second time kind of loses its value. But for the most part, the comedy works very well in this movie. I saw this movie with a girl. Don't act surprised. And the two of us were probably the only people in that theater that were over the age of 12 that weren't parents. But we were laughing quite a bit throughout that film, so yeah, you don't necessarily have to be a child to laugh at this movie. Adults, there's plenty of humor for you as well. And the other strength this movie really has going for it is with the visuals. Everything in this movie just looks stunning. From the island that has basically become the food equivalent of the Lost World from Jurassic Park. That's pretty much what they're going for. Just everything is bright and colorful, and the various food animals like watermelon elephants and potato hippos and various other combinations, kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, except with food. They're all incredibly well done, especially the cheeseburger spider creature that ends up stalking them for a good chunk of the movie. That is an incredible piece of work. Yeah, all looks very good, and the characters are all animated well, especially Chester V, who very rarely stands still. He spends a lot of his time moving something, especially his arms. Like, whenever he's talking, he's always moving his arms all over the place in various angles, including some angles that I think the human arm is not meant to bend. I half expected them to reveal that he was actually an alien somewhere along the way. But yeah, he was an interesting character. Yeah, really where this movie gets kind of weak is with the plot. It's not necessarily bad, it's just, it's been done before and it's been done to death. You know, you have the hero whose childhood idol kind of takes him under his wing and gradually tries to push him away from his friends. And of course he goes along with it because he wants to impress his idol, but soon realizes that his idol is actually not the nice guy he thinks he is, and realizes he's been neglecting his friends. Oh, I'm sorry, group hug, everybody, let's conquer the evil guy who used to be my idol. It's been done to death. So this movie really gets no points for originality in terms of the plot. But really the plot is just there to serve as a backdrop for the visuals and the comedy. So the movie still holds its own without it. And really the only other complaint I have is with the casting. Now, it's not that any of the actors are doing a bad job or anything. In fact, they are all very, very good. I especially like Terry Crews as Earl Devereaux, who I heard was played by Mr. T in the first movie. He chose not to come back for this one, but yeah, that character was probably my favorite. There's a moment where, like, right when they get to the island that has been overrun with all this giant food animal stuff, and everyone's just looking at it wide-eyed and slack-jawed, and Earl says, "It's enough to make a grown man cry." A tear forms on the corner of his eye. "But not this man. Get back in there, tear!" And he literally sucks the tear back into his eye. That was awesome. But anyway, yeah, the cast all do a fine job. What really concerns me, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, whatever happened to voice actors? Because pretty much everyone in here, Bill Hader as Flint Lockwood, Anna Faris as Sam Sparks, James Caan as Flint's father Tim, Will Forte as Chester V, Neil Patrick Harris as Steve, which is Flint's pet monkey, who apparently has been fitted with some kind of electronic device that allows him to speak. To an extent. He really can't say more than one or two words at a time, and it's all this really high-pitched robotic sound. But, you know, that character especially, I have nothing against Neil Patrick Harris. I think he is a fine actor. I am a fan of his work. I like the guy. But, you know, that part, because the voice has been filtered and modified so heavily, so it's just this high-pitched, whiny, electronic voice, that could have been done by anyone. Why Neil Patrick Harris, except so you can say Neil Patrick Harris is in this movie? Because that's really the only thing I can figure, and this is kind of a trend with animated movies nowadays. They pretty much have forgotten that voice actors even exist, and they just get regular actors and just have them do the voices, which is really weird. Are they just afraid that if they don't have a big name on the marquee, then they won't be able to sell the movie? Because honestly, I don't really think that's true. I think as long as you market your movie properly, it'll sell. Now, of course, I say that, and yet I've done several year-end top 10 lists where there are very good movies that, of course, bomb horribly. But, you know, for the most part, I think with animated movies, you can get away with that, especially if your audience is children. Because kids aren't going to know who Bill Hader and James Caan... They're definitely not going to know who James Caan is. Neil Patrick Harris, maybe because he's on How I Met Your Mother, but... yeah, for the most part, they're not going to know who any of these guys are anyway, so what's the point? But, yeah, you know, not trying to take anything away from these actors. They all did a fine job. They did fantastic. I really like the characters that they helped create here. And I'm certainly not suggesting you can never have big Hollywood actors in voice acting roles, because sometimes that works out very well. Robin Williams in Aladdin certainly comes to mind. But, you know, bring back the actual voice actors. You know, they don't have to be relegated to Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or wherever they are now. You can use them in movies and they will still work. Really, they will. Trust me. It'll work. But yeah, that's really about all I have to say. Not a whole lot more to say about this one. If you haven't seen it yet, I would say it's worth seeing in the theater. If you don't get the chance, wait for the DVD. It's definitely worth a rental, if nothing else. And that's about all I got to say, so take care.
Yeah, we'll be thankful we didn't run into a cheese spider!
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2.
Chimpanzee! Steve! Chimpanzee! Steve! Chimpanzee! Shove! Steve!